Hello and good evening, CSI 157, Section 841 and 847 students at Anne Arundel Community College for the spring 2014 second 8-week term with the Routing and Switching Essentials class. This PacketTracer activity will be the solution set and tutorial for PacketTracer activity 2.3.1.2, which is the Skills Integration Challenge. As you can see here, we have our addressing table for switch 1 and PCs 1 and 2. Our scenario is the network administrator has asked you to configure a new switch. We're going to use a list of the requirements to configure the new switch with the initial settings, SSH, and port security. Alright, so the first requirements are to configure switch number 1, or switch 1 I should say. And so let's go ahead and pull it up. We're in user config mode. We need to go into we're in user exec. We need to go into privilege exec mode by typing the enable command. And then we're going to go into global config mode. The first step is to set the host name to S1, which takes place immediately. We need a banner message, so we'll do the banner MOTD command. Our delimiting character will be the $, and we need to have warning in the word. So this is your final warning message. And then the $. It says the console port login and password of Cisco. So we'll go ahead and go into line configuration mode for the console, line con 0. So our password is going to be Cisco, and we'll put in the login keyword, right? Because we want to make sure that when someone tries to log in via the console, they're prompted for the password. That password will be Cisco. So we'll type exit, and now we're going to set the enable secret password. And we're going to use 0 because it'll be unencrypted, and that'll be class. Alright, so our enable secret password is set. We want to encrypt plain text password. So if you remember, if I do a do show run and we go down and we take a look at our line password for line con 0, that is Cisco, and you can see it in plain text. So we want that to be encrypted. So this will be service password encryption. So now if I do a do show run and I go down to the bottom, you'll see that it's been encrypted right here. Okay, so we've encrypted plain text passwords, the management interface addressing, and that's going to be for VLAN 1. So we'll go into interface VLAN 1. We'll do a no shut, bring that interface up, and then I'm going to assign the IP address of 10.10.10.2, and the subnet mask, again, is a 255.255.255.0. So that's a class A address because of the value in the first octet. However, we've applied a class C subnet mask. And again, something you'll hear me say multiple times over and over again is the class of the address does not change. We're simply applying a different class's subnet mask to this class A 10 dot address. I'll even put a description here. We'll just say VLAN 1 interface. Okay, and then we're going to configure SSH for remote access. And so the first thing that we need to do, and so let's go ahead and get out of interface mode here. So if I were to try to do the RSA, or crypto key generate RSA, and hit enter, you'll see you receive this message, this error message here saying, please define a domain name first. And so, and I'll even exit out one level further. If I were to do a show IP SSH, it comes back and says SSH is disabled, version 1.9.9. Please create RSA keys at least 768 bits in size to enable SSH v2. And then it gives you the authentication timeout and the authentication retries, which we saw as one of the activities for PacketTracer 1.3.1.3 earlier in this term. Okay, so we want to go ahead and set the domain name. So we'll go from privilege exec into global config. So we do IP domain name, and there we go, domain name, and it needs to be cisco.com. And then we're going to go ahead and do our RSA key. So we're going to go crypto key generate and RSA, and we'll do the question mark, and that's where we hit enter, and it'll ask you how many bits. So it can be anywhere from 360 It says a range of 360 to 2048 for your general purpose keys. So we'll do 2048. Now, when you're generating these keys in PacketTracer, you'll notice that it's instantaneous. If I come up here, this is a 3550 switch here. Move these things out of the way. So this is a 3550 switch, Cisco 3550. And so if I do the crypto key generating, you can see there are far more options in some cases. Crypto key generate RSA, right? Whoops. As you can see, no domain name here. So let's do IP domain name. Whoops, domain name. And we'll do Cisco.com, just like we're doing for our PacketTracer. So now when I try to generate those RSA keys, you can see we receive the same message. But if I do 2048, right, the CPU on this switch is going to have to generate these keys. And so it doesn't take place instantaneously. You're actually going to have to sit here for a little bit, not too long, but it is going to take some time to generate those keys. And that's on a 3550. That's an older switch. If I come over here, this is a switch that is a 3750. So if I do a do show version, this is a 3750 switch. So it's a little newer switch than the 3550, but let's see what happens here. So we'll set the domain name first, IP domain name, and we'll set it to Cisco.com. And I misspelled domain there. I apologize. D-O-M-A-I-N, domain name, and Cisco.com. So the domain name is set. So now if I do if I do a crypto key or crypto key generate RSA, and again I can do 2048, and it just takes some time to do it. So sometimes students get the impression that this is an instantaneous execution of the crypto keys being generated, but it's not. In the real world, it does take some time. And let's go back and see. All right, so the keys have been set here. So if I do a do show run, and this is where you'll be able to see your key, and then here we go right there. So there's a certificate right there, and so we'll come back over to switch 1 here at 3750, and it is still generating that key, and there we go. All right, and it shows you SSH has been enabled, and SSH version 1.99, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. So again, just to show you that in the real world, it does take some time for those keys to generate, whereas here, with PacketTracer, it's almost instantaneous. Okay. Now it says an RSA key pair parameters to support SSH version 2. So now if I type do show IP SSH, you can see that it shows that SSH is enabled, but yet it's version 1.99. So if I type in IP SSH and version and then a question mark, see I can do version 1 or version 2. So when I choose version 2, if I rerun that command, do show IP SSH, you can see now, whereas before it said 1.99, it now says 2.0. And in some instances, and let's come back up here to our 3750, so as you can see here, we're also running 1.99, but if I were to do IP SSH and change my version, I can change it to 2. If I do a do show run, in some instances, you will actually see, and there it is right there, inside the configuration file, where it is running IP SSH version 2. And version 2 is the version in the real world. That's the version that you want to be running because there are known security flaws with version 1.99. So I was glad to see here that they had us change to version 2. All right, so if I do a do show run here, as you can see, just like the real world, it's going to tell us it's running version 2. All right, so I'll page down. Okay, so we've fixed our domain name to Cisco.com. We've generated our SSH keys. We've set it to version 2. Now it says user admin with secret password CCNA. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do username, and the username will be admin. And then we're going to go ahead and do password, and that password will be unencrypted when we enter it, CCNA. And what's interesting here is you'll notice that the privilege, we could have set the privilege before or instead of the password, now that we've put password in here, we don't get the option to set the privilege. And what the privilege level is that's going to give the user default privilege levels, or a default privilege level when that user logs in. And so if you come up here, and we'll come back, and this is a real switch here, 3750, if I type in username, and we'll do the same command, username admin, password, and if I type in the question mark command, we'll be presented with the choices here, so 0, and then it wants the unencrypted password, CCNA, question mark, and it's the same dialog. So as you can see here, when I roll back to username admin and then question mark, I can put in privilege level 0 through 15, right? And so typically you'll want users to log in and you don't want them to have privilege exec right out of the gate. So you'd want to assign privilege level 0 to those users. All right. And so that'll come up later in the course. So we'll go ahead and set that password and that username up. So we've got that done. So it says VTY lines only accept SSH connections and use local login for authentication. So in other words, the VTY lines are going to be using this admin username and password combination we just entered. But if I do a do show run, let's make sure that that username, admin is here, the privilege is 1, password is now encrypted. Whoops, the password has now been encrypted, and that's the encrypted version of the password. Because again, we've enabled service password encryption has been enabled. So let's go ahead and change our VTY line. So we'll do line VTY 015, and so we're going to set the password on those to be, I apologize. So the VTY lines only accept the password. So if we do the question mark, you'll see the transport input SSH. So it only accepts SSH, and the login will be local, right? So you're going to have to use that admin username and the password of CCNA to get logged in if you're accessing the VTY lines. And so now it also wants us to configure the port security features to restrict network access. So it needs us to disable all unused ports. So let me back out one level here. Let's do a do show run to take a look at the port status. So as you can see, looks like all the ports are in the up and up state. So let's come up here and see which ports, FA01, and it should be FA02, and it is. So let's go ahead and we're going to disable all of the other ports. So again, we're going to use that interface range command that we used in PacketTracer 2.2.4.9. We're going to choose FA03 all the way to 24, and we're going to shut those down. So those have all been shut down now. And I'm also going to go ahead and do interface range GI11 to 12, and we're going to shut those down. And so now those have been shut down. So now all interfaces, or all unused ports, have been shut down. So set the interface mode to access. And so if you remember, if I do a do show run here, fast Ethernet 01 and 02, while they're up, are not set to the access mode. And so let's go ahead and do that. So again, interface range FA01 to 2, and we'll do the switch port mode access. So we've set that to switch port mode access, and we're going to enable port security to allow only 2 hosts per port. So we'll do a switch port security, whoops, and the maximum, right? So the keyword is 2 hosts per port, so maximum 2. So we'll set that. We're going to record the MAC address in the running configuration and ensure that port violations disable ports. So to disable the port, we already know that we're not going to use the protect mode and we're not going to use the restrict mode. For the port to be disabled, we want that to be in the shutdown mode, and that is the default. So we're going to go ahead, we'll type it in, switch port security, violation, and shutdown, even though we know that this is the default. So now that we've set that, we also need to record the MAC address in the running configuration. So we're going to go ahead and do switch port security, and we'll do the MAC address, and we're not going to manually enter that in. We'll do sticky. And that way it'll automatically learn those MAC addresses as the first frame is received, and it takes a look at the source MAC address in those frames. Okay, so we're at 89% right now, so let me go ahead and end, and I'll type write mem. We're going to save our config. And so let's see, I'm wondering if it's asking to set the interface mode to access, if it wants you to do that for all ports. So let's check our results real quick. Alright, so port security on FA01 is still missing, and then the port security on FA02, and then usernames needs to be checked. Alright, so let's take a look at the port security settings on FA01 and 02. So if I do a show run, you can see we've got the switch port. Aha! So we're missing, and we'll do the interface range FA01 to 02. So we do switch port, port security all by itself, and that always needs to be done. So do show run, and now you can see that it's in there. I apologize, thought I'd entered that in. Alright, so that's in there, and so the final thing will be the usernames. And so let's take a look over here real quick. So it wanted us to create a user admin with secret password CCNA, and the SSH would be used for access to those ports. Let's check our results and make sure that the last outstanding item is going to be usernames, and it is. So the SSH server is there, and so now we're looking for usernames. And so what we're going to do now, go ahead, we're going to take a look. So there's something wrong with the username. So let's close this up here. Let me double check to make sure it didn't want a secret. Okay, yeah. So it looks like the user admin with a secret password. I believe I did not use secret. So let's go back in here, do a show run. Whoops, do show run. And the username admin privilege right. So let's go ahead and we'll do a no username admin. So now if I do a do show run, the username is gone. So we'll do username admin, and then we'll do oops, I'm sorry. We'll do secret, and then the secret will be CCNA, and I believe that's what it's looking for. I'd initially just set the password normally, and so there we go. Okay, so we'll end, and we'll do a write mem. All right, so that is the Skills Integration Challenge for Chapter 2. Again, this has been PacketTracer Activity 2.3.1.2 for students in CSI158 sections 841 and 847 at Anne Arundel Community College for the spring 2014 semester. All right, I hope you found this video tutorial helpful, and best of luck.